What's up, everyone? If you are a small business owner, this week's episode of the Money Huddle is for you. We've got a specialist on with us. His name is Paul Fackler, and he specializes in helping business owners have a successful exit when they're ready to retire and sell their business. Check it out.
Welcome to the Money Huddle, a podcast that explores financial topics for families and small business owners. Hosted by Michael Baker and Ross Marinell. All opinions expressed by Michael and Ross or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and may not reflect the opinions of Planners Alliance. The podcast recording is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Planners Alliance may maintain positions in securities discussed on the program.
All right, buddy. So I'm here with my good friend, Paul Fackler. And Paul, why don't you just tell everybody on the podcast what you do for a living?
Thanks, Michael, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. And to all you business owners out there, first off, you're not alone in going through some of these difficult times through this COVID-19 outbreak. So I'd love to any insights that I can provide or help you with in kind of planning some things out. Would be happy to certainly help in any way that I can. So, Michael, thanks for having me. I work with small business owners as an exit planner and an M&A advisor to this small and middle market, which means essentially under 20 million in revenue businesses, to help them plan out, forecast, and be able to plan what makes the most sense for them exiting their business, whether very simple or often very convoluted businesses and structures.
Gotcha. So when when we say exit planning to the layperson on the street, that's really just saying, hey, this person's ready to sell the business or they're ready to retire and they're trying to just figure out how to unwind this. And then if they don't have a plan in place, they generally are looking to do either this themselves or work with someone like yourself. Is that fair?
That's completely fair. I've found, Michael, that most people know that they want to exit or know that they ought to exit if they're not giving it them, their all, but they're just really uncertain about how that looks, whether it's a family situation or they want to pass it to their employees or third party. A lot of that is very confusing. So kind of coming in and helping from the beginning makes sense, whether I can help from a vendor relationship and an ongoing relationship as a client or not, just kind of help facilitate those conversations that people have never considered or never done, successfully implemented before.
Yeah. So in the world of business owners, what percentage of them would you say give a decent amount of energy to their own exit planning strategies?
2%.
Yeah, I knew it was like really low. I mean, it's kind of like retirement planning in a lot of ways. It's something that like we all know is important. If you sit us down and you force us to answer some basic questions about financial literacy, most of us can give the appropriate responses, but it's in the day-to-day, week to week, how we live our lives that a lot of that stuff gets pushed to the back burner. And from our previous conversations, like I know that a lot of business owners, like it just kind of creeps up on them one day, like, oh, you know what, I think I'm ready, but no groundwork has been laid for them to do that. So how, for somebody that's like, listening right now and thinking like, you know what, this is probably something that I want to explore or need to explore, what's the best way for them other than to contact you, of course? What's kind of the best way or process for them to get going and thinking about this with the appropriate mindset?
Start asking questions would be the first thing that I would recommend to people. There's a lot of good resources in the ways of books, people and professionals, and it can be an overwhelming process. Business owners generally are tainted from the respect that they've had bad relationships with a CPA before, or an attorney before, or some customer that took advantage of them. So business owners are generally very weary of this process and finding someone that can be a good partner throughout this process. But to answer your question, Michael, just simply ask questions. Ask a trusted advisor of yours some difficult questions. Start talking about with your family members, with your husband, wife, your partner, what that timing looks like. What with your trusted financial advisor, perhaps what makes sense in terms of dollar amounts and the types of things and the ways that you want to live out moving forward, whether that is a retirement, whether that is a change in career, so on and so forth. So ask questions, talk with your trusted advisors about what can be done, what are the possibilities. That's a great way to get the ball rolling. Certainly reach out to me or a professional in the marketplace is a great way to do that. Keep in mind there are lots of ways to exit your business. So it is a very in-depth conversation and one that should be done in the right way.
There are a lot of misconceptions with business owners when it comes to the amount of time that it takes to do this. I know that we kind of live in this microwave generation right now where speed is what is generally speaking highly desirable. We decide we want something done, and what's the fastest, best way to get it done. And business transitions don't necessarily work in the same type of timeline that we are generally accustomed to doing. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. There's a lot of ways to go with this question. If someone calls me up tomorrow and says, Michael, I want to sell my business. I want to sell my business before the end of the year. I want to get as much money as I can for it. What can be done here? And so I'll take a look at their situation, their financials, some of their operational components of the business, management, et cetera. Some of the fundamental things, Michael, that you would imagine that I would take a look at, because interested buying parties would want to know some of these fundamental things. So this is a very typical question. Business owners tend to think it would take less than 6 months to sell their business, to actively sell their business. That's just kind of what I've seen from 100 or more interested sellers. In reality, if a business is turnkey and it's ready to go and there's a huge market for it, forget about COVID-19 right now, because that's throwing a wrench in a lot of the mergers and acquisitions market. But assume it was pre-February market, and we have a turnkey business, that may successfully happen in 6 months. But typically it's going to be a 6 to 24 month process to be able to successfully sell from the time the business is put on the market to the time when due diligence and closing occurs. And then there's components after the sale. A seller typically has to stay on and make sure that there's some sort of a transition period for a buyer to be able to successfully implement and take over the business in a good way, which can last for years depending on the different structures.
So I'm hearing that for people that know that they would really like to sell their business or potentially have or merge their company so that they can work on succession planning for themselves, this is something that they should be thinking about earlier than they may have in the past. From a timeline perspective, we need to give ourselves plenty of runway for them to develop their plan, go through the process, and make sure this is done successfully, versus just backing themselves into a corner where they need to transition out and then the timeline doesn't work for them.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of different factors here. The importance of the sale to a retirement plan or somebody's portfolio. Typically, Michael, as we've talked about, small business owners wrap a lot of the value or their net worth into the value of the business. So
Mm-hmm.
invest highly into the business. It's a double-edged sword because business owners then are dependent to be able to exit with some sort of a check that can sustain life and the lifestyle that they want to live. So in doing that, yeah, it's more of a process to be able to successfully exit than a one-time event to be able to, oh, here's a check for $1 million or $2 or $20 million to exit the business. Yes, it does take for exit planning multiple years for financial and operational contingency plans and contracts and employee agreements and all these types of things that are crucial for sellers to be able to implement. So yeah, all this plays into a seller's ability to line it up, find the right buyer, successfully go through diligence, and execute on an agreement.
One of the things that you shared with me that I thought was really interesting was the number, or we'll give it a percentage of businesses that don't sell was a lot higher than I even realized. Can you share a little bit about, some of why you think that? First of all, share with us what that number is, and then why do you feel that number is so high, and what can business owners do to improve their odds of success?
So the number is 80% of listed businesses that are put on the market unsuccessfully exit or unsuccessfully sell. So the reverse Pareto principle, or the Pareto principle, which is 20% success rate of listing one's business and exiting it via a third party sale. There are so many factors that go into determining one's success or one's ability to be able to get the check that they require to exit their business. But many things that can be done to increase the likelihood of the success that you're talking about. The first and foremost, like anything else, is planning, whether it's retirement planning to exit your business, planning to succeed at marriage or so on, having kids, lots of life events, planning it out and planning out some of the contingencies, what could go wrong, what's going on in the business. Planning out these steps is critically important. Having the right team on board of financial advisors, CPAs, attorneys, mergers and acquisitions advisors, so on and so forth, dramatically increases your chances of success. Now, if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. So you have to put in the work in order to successfully pivot the business into something that can be sellable to increase your chances of success. And then finally, I find that business sellers really don't have a good grasp or a concept of what the buyer's market looks like, as in who's out there that is buying businesses similar to the one that a business owner is selling or one that they own. And it's okay to not be an expert in everything. Business owners are really good at what they do, and you're really good at what you do as a financial advisor, and I'm really good at what I do, and we all have different roles, and that's right. Okay. But it's critical that a business owner has a basic understanding of who's out there and what's going on, and that lends itself back to the original question, what a business owner can do, and start asking questions and become curious. Because if you're not curious, and you've had a friend, Bob, who sold his business for $50 million a couple years ago, and just lean on Bob's success and say, well, I'll be able to do something similar and at least get a couple $1 million. That's the equivalent of sticking your head in the sand and not preparing for success or failing to prepare. So that would be the final thing, is just understanding generally what's going on in the marketplace for business buyers, whether it's an individual buyer, if it's a smaller size business, a mid-sized business where you might have a competitor want to come in, or a bigger mid-sized business where perhaps a private equity firm might want to come in and consolidate the marketplace in this region, or for the type of business that a seller runs.
Man, When you start talking, it feels, it could feel overwhelming just to hear, but we understand if you think about the number of people that, business owners specifically, that they've been successful in building something. This is kind of, in some cases, a life's work that we are talking about. And it makes sense that you want to have everybody in the right seat on the bus so that, this doesn't, you don't, to use a football analogy, this is the money huddle. You don't fumble on the 2-yard line, like right when you're getting ready to cash out and give yourself that retirement or the next phase of your life that you've been working towards. One of the things too, that every time that I get into a conversation about selling businesses, and this is something that's really common in the financial industry right now, a lot of practices, a lot of older advisors are, succession planning is like the buzzwords of the day right now in our industry because of the demographics of our industry to some extent. But one of the things that always comes up, always, is business valuations and how to even understand what your business could be worth. Can you share a little bit of, from your expertise on just how people should be thinking about the business valuations and give us like a crash course on that, if you will?
So I think it's vitally important, first off, that a business owner understands generally what their business is worth. It's a complicated question. There's a lot of components to understanding valuation, and there's no way that I can value 20 businesses or help an owner value their business on this type of a setting and
Sure.
in this way right now. But to understand, first off, I'd say, yes, get the business valued. It can be done as simply as an opinion of value, pretty much free to be able to get that done. I can help a business owner get that done and look at some business comparable sales to understand kind of a specific range where they may fall under. They can get that done with a licensed valuation expert. There are many different ways, and a trusted advisor of a business owner can point them in the right direction, depending on the size of the business, how much they want to spend, the kind of the authority level that they want to have that under. Mm-hmm. So I think that's critically important. But getting back to one of your previous questions is the likelihood of a potential sale, which is an 80% failure rate of a small to mid-size small business, mm-hmm. which essentially means that even if I come in and say, hey, you potentially could sell it for $1 million or $3 million or whatever that number may be, there's still an incredibly large chance that it may not be able to be sold. So we're talking about quite a range in value here, from potentially $0 or a smaller amount of money upwards to perhaps $1 million to $5 million. Sure. So business owners need to understand and process what that looks like, and hey, what happens if we can't sell it? What are some contingency plans, or death in the family, or a no buy sell agreement in place, or some of the things? What about COVID-19 going on right now? And we operate a retail business that's dependent upon people coming into our facility and buying our services or goods. So valuation, like we talked about, is extremely important to understand. But at the same time, with the success or failure rate the way that it is, you need to understand that it could be quite a wide range. The second thing that I would say to this is businesses and owners typically don't think about the valuation of their business because they're used to thinking in terms of day-to-day, what's important to me right now, as in how much money am I making? So business owners live in the world of how much money am I making? That's the income component that people are used to, as in, do we have enough, in the bank account to pay the employees and hit payroll, or do we have enough for the vacation, or do we have enough for our child's dream college? These types of questions are way more pressing for a business owner top of mind for a business owner than, hey, can we get 1.5 million or can we get 1.75 million for this business? So um, that's the other thing that I would say is my clients, successful clients, typically are able to think in both terms of income, how much money the business is making, or them and their family are making on a personal level, and they're able to take a look at, and it's like a right brain, left brain thing, a value of a business and some of the risk factors that may jeopardize a potential sale or thus increase the value of the business.
It it's definitely a lot to consider. One thing that I would ask about, personally, that I see happen a good bit is, and I would think about like the maybe the small business to micro business market where you've got a key person, or maybe the owner is the key person that in a lot of ways views themselves and may actually be irreplaceable to the business. But we all know that if they don't have a plan for how to transition, most people's plan is also not to work forever either. So, how would you, encourage some of those types to be thinking about, how to sell their business where it's heavily built on one individual's reputation or one individual's skill set? Do they need to be thinking differently than, maybe some other, people that have the ability to have partnerships and be able to be bought out of their share of the business? Or they're in an industry where they have competitors, where a competitor may easily want to come in and merge or scoop up their business.
Yes. The smaller the business, the
Yeah.
more challenges there are in selling the business.
Mm.
Owner dependency is the first thing that buyers are going to take a look at. So when I'm coaching business owners who are going through a sale process, let's say we get all the way down to a sale process and there's management meetings where buyers are coming in and meeting with the management. It could just be one owner. It could be a family. It could be a whole boardroom full of people, depending on the size and scope of the business. Owner dependency is the first thing, along with the financials, that buyers are going to take a look at. So when we talk about a micro business, it's extremely challenging, whether it's myself, anyone in the marketplace, or an owner reaching out to their competitor or colleague to be able to sell their business. That's the first thing that's going to pop in mind to a potential buyer, as far as their interest, the valuation that they would put out there for this potential micro size transaction. And then to your other thoughts and questions, I would just say that there's a lot of work from the time when a business owner conceives the idea of exiting their business. There's a lot of opportunity that they have in exit planning, contingency planning, however the terminology that you want to use, to be able to essentially build up your management team, or build up the team that you have. You might not call it a management team.
Right.
I would recommend that you call it a management team, and treat those people and pay those people like a management team to increase essentially the value of your business. But not all those businesses are at that point. And I can understand and relate to that situation. But to build up those people, your team members that you have in your business, to build them up between the time that you conceive selling the business and having a management meeting with an interested buying party, the better that you're able to build up those team members, increase their roles in the business, and make sure that they're more likely to stay on, whether contractually or obligations or whatever is going on in the business, that they're interested in staying on after a potential transaction. This increases values of businesses. It increases likelihood of a potential sale. So there are many things that can be done in the way. I know that's a broad answer and it's a broad scope. There are
Sure.
lots of ways to explore that. But that's how I would answer your question, from a micro-sized business where there might just be a couple of employees and $100,000 in annual revenue, all the way up to a $50, $100 million top line national or international manufacturing business.
And from listening to you, it sounds like there are so many areas that, going back to one of the very first things you said, would be to ask a lot of questions, would be to really do a deep evaluation of your business to find these, I'm going to call them sticky points, where, if you can check the box in these areas, it's giving you the best chance to have a good, strong valuation for your business, but also make your business very attractive to buyers. And from, you know, how you know, how your numbers look, of course, but how much goodwill you have with the employees, you have a management team, you have all these things where it kind of insulates this business from just being, something that looks great, and feels good personally to the owner, to becoming something that looks great and looks very attractive to a prospective buyer. Is that, and so, with that being said, one of the things we're all dealing with right now is just this COVID-19. I mean, what are some of the things that owners can be doing right now during this period of time to be, thinking about planning their exit, or any during a cyclical downtime? Because, our tendency is to think right now, well, a lot of businesses can't even be open, so how can I be, possibly thinking about an exit planning strategy right now? But we all know that there are always things you can be looking at to be proactive. So can you share some thoughts on, some of the things that owners can be doing right now to move the needle for themselves?
Certainly. One of the first things that I recommend to customers who are experiencing this, I mean, it's a crazy time. Businesses across the world are essentially hurting because of this global pandemic, which is kind of unprecedented. But one of the first recommendations that I gave to my customers is document everything that goes on during this pandemic. There's a lot of reasons for that, but once we get through this and are on the other side of this, buyers are going to give a break to a lot of different businesses that experienced a one-time blip. Let's say you have a business that's sailing along and growing at a 5% annual clip, and then this year they took a 15 or 20% top line dip, and earnings took a hit, and perhaps they had to go to the SBA to pay their payroll during this time period, or get an emergency loan. Not atypical. Many businesses are experiencing that right now, including a couple of mine. So what I recommend to them is document that took place, that this is a one-time blip. What are the customers that they lost out on? How did expenses and overhead contribute to some of the loss in earnings that they had, and so on and so forth. So that would be the first thing that I would say, because when we get on the other side of this, buyers are going to be very understanding of a dip in revenue or earnings associated from the COVID-19 pandemic that we're experiencing right now. So monitor it, watch it, make sure that you have enough liquid capital, obviously, to weather the storm and get through it is priority number one. But during this time frame, I would, a lot of us are at home. You're shooting from home. I'm shooting from home. Perhaps a business owner shooting from home, depending on if that they're essential business and so on and so forth. But is to be thinking and asking questions. Getting back to the original, the question that you asked in next steps. Be thinking about your motivation for running this business. What are your goals for running this business? As we've talked about, maybe a business owner wants to create a great income for themselves, and they've succeeded and built the business around them because they're really good at what they do. They're really good at sales and or operations, perhaps managing people, but they're really good and laser focused at what they do. But if the goal is exiting the business, it's about making the business as attractive as you can to the marketplace, as you pointed out previously. And so how do you do that? Once again, a lot of exit planning, open-ended questions that can be asked to help a business owner get there. But if the goal is to exit in 5 years, a business owner may be 60 years old and wants to exit at 65. It's not picking up the phone at age 64 and calling someone like myself or calling someone like you as a financial advisor and saying, hey, can you give me a referral? That's not going to be the best course of action in order to succeed, getting maximum dollar, making sure that you're able to successfully exit. It's about kind of laying out priorities. It's about asking your trusted advisors and really taking the steps, to be able to plan out a multi-year exit, so that when you're 64 and a half, that another downturn or recession doesn't happen and throws you back a couple of years, or there could be 1,000 different things. We're having a pandemic for the first time in the world. We're getting thrown out of order. What if a business owner got sick last year and can't continue to run the business once we get on the other side of this? There's just so many things to consider. And so I would urge business owners to look at it from a multi-year time frame and try to plan out best case scenarios.
Well, real quick, wrapping up here, one of the things that that I saw on a list of questions that I was putting together for you, and I wanted to ask before we wrap, or as we wrap up, in this environment with everything going crazy and just constant negative headline after negative headline, who would be crazy enough to actually be looking to buy businesses right now? Do you see anybody in the market looking to buy right now? And who would they be, or what types of industries right now are kind of being still in play, I would say?
So I've talked with a number of buyers, some who are sidelined depending on the industry and size and the pipeline of deals that they have. Perhaps it's an individual buyer who wants to buy one business and wants some more certainty. Perhaps it's a private equity business, or it could be a strategic buyer who's looking to roll up some of the smaller businesses in its industry, and each have different goals and objectives for accomplishing what they want to accomplish. So the first one, an individual buyer, probably is going to be sitting on the sidelines. An individual buyer probably has a professional services job, is what I see: a CPA, a financial advisor, an insurance broker, those types of folks who think, boy, I can make a lot more money if I just buy a business, and I could easily double the business, so on and so forth. So those business owners, perhaps in the $1-2 million top line revenue or under, those could be a lot of who your buyers may be, an individual person. Second category, private equity, and depending on the industry, a lot of them are sitting on the sidelines. The aberrations to that are tech. So software businesses are really, really strong right now. Even hardware businesses are strong, and businesses that are what we would call, or what we would deem essential. If your heating and air or your AC turns off right now here in the middle of April and it's going to be 95 in 3 weeks, you're going to get that fixed. And so heating and air businesses, plumbers are really performing well right now as everyone's home, and you're going to let a repairman in your house despite some of the COVID concerns, because
if the toilet is backed up,
you got a leaky faucet, so you got to get that done. And those businesses are continuing to thrive, and there's still a good amount of activity on those types of businesses. So your private equity depends on the sector, depends on what they're looking to accomplish. Private equity thrive in low interest environments, which we're certainly in right now, where they can borrow and lever their money to accomplish their transaction goals, and they'll pay more typically when we're in a low interest environment. But at the same time, there's a lot of private equities out there right now who have a portfolio of companies. Let's say I run a private equity business and I've got 10 companies and I'm looking to buy more. Well, let's say 5 of those companies are in retail or something that's getting hit really, really hard right now. Depending on how they borrowed the money from investors or from lenders when they bought those five businesses that are struggling right now. They're at risk of perhaps losing those businesses if they default
Mhm.
on the loan, or the lender decides to um, take the business back because of a breach of covenants that they instituted when they bought that business. So there are a lot of private equities that are trying to maintain and make sure that they hold on to the businesses that they bought, and don't take a bath during this time, and therefore are turning off a lot of the opportunities to continue to acquire at this particular time. And then finally, strategic buyers, like private equity, it depends on the industry, it depends on their goals. But if a business is down 25-40% in top line revenue right now, they're typically not going to be looking at acquiring. They're going to be looking at what's going on, daily news with the SBA loans, and new laws that are being implemented, and stay at home orders, and these
Right.
types of things. It's just going to be a back burner. Well, we'll wait and see what happens. But the interesting thing that I would say to you is, on the other side of this, if the market continues to languish here for a couple of months or a year or more, fingers crossed we don't enter into a recession. But those strategic buyers are going to be a really good source of potential buyers for a lot of business owners, because private equity may still continue to be hurting from some of the portfolio companies that they've purchased and perhaps lost, and so they may sit on the sidelines if the market continues to stagnate. If the market continues and kind of picks right back up on the other side of COVID-19, private equity could be a great source of potential buyers. So there's a lot of things in play right now, and like
Mhm.
you said, the industries that I would look at are specifically tech, and those essential businesses are continuing to make money, perhaps more money. I looked at a logistics business and a trucking company, and they were shipping all the right things that are thriving in
Right.
conditions like these, and so they're up 27% year to date. So business buyers are still gonna love to take a look at that activity, just depending on what the buyer's balance sheet looks like.
Sure. Well, this has been just a great conversation. I always feel like I'm learning from you as I talk to you, which is great. Such a great source of information. But if I could distill things down into what I heard from you is number for business owners specifically that are looking to sell their business, they need to one they need to be prepared for it to be a process, not something that they're going to be able to flip a switch one day, go find a buyer, get it done in a very short time frame. Not saying that can't happen, but that shouldn't be the expectation. Number two, that they should be prepared to really do a deep dive, or I would say a long look in the mirror at their business to identify points of strength and points of weakness, and someone with your expertise can come in and help them through that so that they can put themselves in the best position to ultimately have what we call this successful exit. And then number three, like right now during this period of time, even though the economy's kind of been the brakes have been put down on everybody for various reasons in various locations, this is still a time that people can be proactive in doing this type of evaluation for their business. They can be, even if they're home, they could be doing Zoom calls with folks like yourself or their trusted advisory teams or their whoever sits on their circle of influence about their business, and really going through this process of evaluating their business about why they do it, why they're doing it, what their long-term plan is. Do they want to exit? When is that? And being proactive instead of just trying to hunker down and just ride through this and letting more time go by without this work getting done. Is that a reasonable way to kind of summarize our conversation today?
I think that that's fantastic. Certainly, there are a lot of businesses that have their blinders on right now because they essentially want to make sure that they're liquid, and so
Sure.
we both understand that, and
Yes.
it can be a lot of challenges associated with making sure that the lights stay on, perhaps literally or metaphorically
Mm-hmm.
speaking. Um, but for businesses out there that that have a good balance sheet, that while there are a lot of challenges with COVID-19, are able to look at the next steps. I mean, today is the 17th of April, so we're after some of the main tax season. It's pretty easy to get a hold of your CPA if they have some bandwidth to be able to pick up the phone and talk with them. Your attorney perhaps is not as busy as they ordinarily would be. And some of my business is unfortunately slowed down. So what an opportunity to get a hold of the right people, the right advisors, to be able to have some of these conversations, to take like you said, a good hard look in the mirror of your business, and to make sure you have the right team around you that can challenge some of your theories and kind of evaluate your business in a realistic expectation and lay out some next steps. So I think that's really appropriate and can be very beneficial and pay long-term dividends to business owners.
Absolutely. Paul, if someone listening wanted to reach out to you or get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, the best way is to pick up the phone and give me a call. I can make myself very accessible, whether by Zoom or hopefully in person here really soon. But the best way to do that is just pick up the phone, call me, text me, 704-557-6862, and happy to chat with you confidentially about whatever it is you're going on, from your business to buying a business or talking about the marketplace as a whole.
And I can second that. Paul has always been more than generous with his time. Anytime I've reached out to him to text him at random times or give him a call and just ask random questions about certain ideas. So thank you for that. And Paul, thank you for being generous today and hopping on here and doing a podcast with us. We thank you. And for those of you listening, hopefully you enjoyed the show. If you've got questions for Paul, I strongly encourage you to reach out, contact him. He means what he says when he's willing to just make himself available to answer questions and point you in the right direction. And if there's other topics or guests you'd like us to bring onto the show, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can email me directly at michael@vcplanning.com, or you can email the show, themoneyhuddle@vcplanning.com. You can find us on Facebook. And as always, we will talk to you next time.